Recording in progress.
All right, so welcome back. Welcome back to Think Differently. If you don't know me, my name is Laura Livingston. I am a business and mindset coach, and I'm really passionate about working with people who are passionate about what they do. I find more and more my motivation over the years gets more and more attached to the person that I'm working with and their attachment to their vision and mission and all the excitement that they have around their craft. And I've learned that some things that like on the surface that I'd be like, I don't know if that's like particularly interesting to me, but if my client is like, I'm geeking out, like I'm all in and I dive in. So if you're passionate about what you do, even a little bit, you're in the right place. And I work one-on-one with my clients to help them grow and scale their businesses. Sometimes we're even scaling back or pivoting or managing a maternity leave. But whatever sort of next phase your business is in store for you and your business, that's where I really like to jump in and work with my clients. And I help them to basically just grow and scale simpler, healthier, more profitable, more enjoyable, more sustainable businesses. And so if you've been here before, normally what I do here in these little conversations, mini masterclasses, whatever you want to call them, usually it is more like a mini masterclass. And that's not to say that that's not for today, but Saturday is my 7-year anniversary of my business anniversary. And so today's going to be a little different, and it's going to be a lot less about me telling you how you can think differently about business, although I think that's still going to be part of the drill here. And it's going to be a little bit more of me sharing my story, a little bit more of me sharing my lessons. Today's topic is this top 7 things, and I made myself pick 7, and I probably could have picked 47. The top 7 biggest lessons I've learned. So this is very Laura-centric, and in that way, it's a little different today. And this is always intended to help you have a healthier, more profitable, more sustainable, more enjoyable business. And I think that you will probably, whether you've just started your business yesterday or whether you started it 20 years ago, I think you will probably see at least one thing that we have in common, because I just personally find that this journey is, it's very personal. We all have our own unique journeys. And so much of what I'm going to say, you probably know somebody who would have said the same thing, or you probably have some of your own same lessons. So all of that is to say, my hope is that this will help you to think differently about your life, about your business, about the way you approach your business, about the season that you're in, about your craft, about your clients, all things. Okay, so let's see. Did I say all the things I said I was going to say? No, I did not. Okay, so I always forget to do this in the end, so I'm going to do this in the beginning. If you are feeling like today is helpful and you would like a little bit of support in applying what you've learned today directly to your business, so much of my work, and the reason that I've chosen one-on-one, well, one of the many reasons I've chosen to focus on one-on-one in my business model is I just feel that so often what we really need is, thanks for that advice, but like what part of that is applicable to me? And what part of that is applicable to my business? And what part of that is applicable to us, me and my business, right now, right? Depending on what season in life you're in, what season in business that you're in, what season your clients and customers are in, will always and ever dictate what you choose to do, hopefully, in terms of strategies that you choose, the way that you run your business behind the scenes, and all of those pieces, not to mention the mindset. I always approach my work from both the strategy and the mindset side. And so all that is to say, again, even though today isn't really like a masterclass of sorts, if something that I say today feels like, ooh, yeah, can we talk a little bit more about this, but specifically with me, I have a one-on-one free mini coaching session. You will be super surprised at what we can accomplish in 30 minutes. So if you've never, this is just limited to one per person. So if you've used this before, then you've used it. But if you haven't used it before, it's a really great opportunity to just get some support for free and like take me up on this. if you've already done a session, or if you're like, yeah, great, 30 minutes. I don't need 30 minutes, Livingston. I need a lot more help than that. I'm ready to just dive in. I work with people both in a 2-week container and a 6-month ongoing container. And I am, to be completely honest, I am like this close to being booked for the rest of the year. And so all that is to say, if you're interested, even in like, I had literally somebody ask me the other day, like, could I book you in for January? Yes, you can. And so I am starting to look and have some more like, I'm not ready yet conversations, but I will be, and I'm looking ahead. If that feels interesting to you and if that feels more like your speed, you can just book a free discovery call and we'll start talking about it. It really is always an exploratory conversation. And so that's always open to you. But just to let you know that we are looking at, I don't like this word, but we are looking at closing out the bookings for this year. So again, if you're planning ahead, please plan ahead. Okay, let's get into this. So 7 years, holy crap. I'm still processing this one. And I think because in so many ways, I feel like I just got started like 2 years ago. But then in other ways, I feel like I've been doing this for 20 years. Like when I think about, I left corporate 8 years ago, there was a year in between my former career and when I started this business. And when I think about my former career, like back when I used to be a change management and organization development consultant. I did a lot of leadership development and executive coaching, and mainly helped big organizations navigate and create and implement changes in their businesses, in their organizations. And so when I think about that, it feels like a really long time, because I can't speak corporate lingo anymore well. But I think what I want to share today, again, as I said, is really like what I've learned, and I'll share a little bit too about my story so that you can see what's applicable to you and what's applicable only to me. As we go, feel free to share questions, insights, comments, concerns in the chat. Oh, and let me put my links here in the chat too. So if you want to take me up on that mini session or discovery call or start talking about something else, here are all the reasons, here are all the places you can do that. I also included links to sign up for these events going forward if that's something you want to come back and do. And then I have some networking events that I do as well. So all the links are there. Feel free to use them. And I would love it if those of you who are live would, and if you're on the replay, just hit record to the email that sent you this replay. Let me know, like, pick one of your business lessons. Like, what is one that has been rising to the top for you right now, right? Like, you don't have to pick 7, you don't have to pick 47, but like, what's one that rises to the top for you right now? And you can either share that now as we have the conversation, or you can be like, oh, you said this and you're reminding me, yes, this is one of my biggest lessons. So you can share that now or later. But I would like to compile these anonymously. I won't put your name on this, but I actually want to compile these and share them with my audience and my network, because I just feel that there's so much here. And I think, probably one of the ones that you guys are going to put in the chat is going to be like, oh yeah, that's, me too. We're all going to be saying me too. And so I just think let's pay that forward to everyone. So please feel free to share at least one of your biggest lessons as we go. Okay, enough prefacing. Number one, context is everything. Context is everything is what I'm calling this one. And what I mean by that, for me, again, this is Laura's business lessons. 8 years ago, let me start over. When I started my career in consulting, I originally wanted to be a therapist when I was 22 years old, a psych major. I really wanted to be a therapist. And I remember going to one of the job fairs for psychology majors, which, by the way, was terrible. Like my friends who had business degrees, went to all these really cool job fairs that we weren't allowed to go to. And it was terrible. Psychology did not do me a favor, even though it is still my number one favorite subject. And I would go back and do that again. But I remember going to like, okay, so what can you do with a psych degree if you're not going to become a therapist? And it was like, here's 3 things. Like, it was terrible. And there's so many things, right? How many people do you know that have a psych degree that are like doing something, right? It's completely applicable all over the place. But all that is to say, in my first 3 or 4 years as a grown-up adult who had graduated from college, working in the world, trying to find what I wanted to do, I remember being very clear with myself that it wasn't for lack of trying, but I just kept thinking like, what I'm meant to do either doesn't exist and I'm going to have to create it myself, or I don't know it exists. And so in so many ways, I want to go back to myself and say like, honey, you were right. You were right. Ain't no business coaches operating in like 1998, right? Like that was not a thing that I know of. It certainly wasn't a thing that I knew of back then. And so I think context is everything, meaning. So I went into sort of HR adjacent, the people side of business, right? I got a degree in organization development, which is essentially if an MBA and like a human behavior graduate degree had a baby. That's essentially the program that I went to. That's organization development. And essentially we were taught how to become good consultants and coaches. And then how to use that, like how to literally like help organizations change, how to help, executives accomplish their vision and mission, how to work with your clients in a holistic way, right? All these things that we now know that coaches do, and other consultants do as well. But as I went through, fast forward 18 years of my corporate career, there was so much that I was intellectually challenged by. There was so much that I really loved working with my peers. I loved being part of a consulting team and banging off ideas off of each other and like, how are we going to do this for the client? Okay, great, let's go. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. Repeat, next week we'll catch up. I loved that piece of it, but the reasons in hindsight that I burnt out was frankly just context. It was just context. I could not attach, as I said in the very beginning, like I really get excited about my clients as individuals, and I get really excited about their missions and visions because they're passionate about it. The last 2 companies I worked for, my last 2 clients, were really big global banks, both of which you've heard of. I just didn't care about their mission. I just didn't care about their bottom line. And so I had to look really hard around my job to find something that I cared about so that I could feel like what I was doing wasn't meaningless, because I knew what I was doing was actually quite important, and I'm still very proud of the work that I did. And I learned so much, and I could not do what I'm doing now if I had not had those roles. And so I wasn't wrong in the choice of my craft exactly. In so many ways, what I'm doing with small businesses is the same thing that I set out to do when I got my graduate school degree and went out to be a consultant. It's just, we call it different things now. And I'm very much more of a coach than a consultant, but it was the mission of the organization. It was the context, meaning the context of how my workday was set up, right? Like most of you probably don't resonate with a 9 to 5, at least for working for other people in that sort of way. And so the pressure, I worked for a big consulting firm, like the pressure was immense. I was working with people that were 10 times smarter than me, and I feel like I'm pretty smart, but I think like the pressure there, it just never ended, right? And the context was what burnt me out. The work itself, in hindsight, I was still right? I was still on the right path from a like, what do I want to do perspective, but the context really killed it all for me, right? And I'm not sad or sorry about that. It was just a lesson. And so, but the reason I say this is my number one is, number one, in 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I was completely burnt out. And I had burnt out, frankly, like more than once. I don't even know how to like track that in hindsight because it's just, I was just a ball of years of exhaustion. But I was on the right track with the work itself. I just needed to create a different context. And I think so often in my work now, for myself in terms of the business decisions I make for my business, but also when I'm helping my clients think these kinds of things through for themselves. I'm very much aware of the context and how that affects us, right? So, for example, if you are about to have a baby, like the business better be set up to support that context instead of just, well, somehow we got to fit the baby into the, no, we're not doing it that way, right? You are going to burn out if you're looking at it from that perspective. And then also, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Am I getting ahead of myself? Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to just say this. That also then means that when you change one thing, you might not need to change it all. As an expert in change, as somebody who's literally like academically studied change at the individual, group, team, and organization and societal levels of what happens in humans when we change and all layers of what that looks like that's like change 101 is like, you don't need to change it all. One little change, butterfly effect, right? Like impacts everything, can impact everything else. And it might be the reason, right? I thought when I burnt out that it was because I'd chosen the wrong work. It wasn't because I chose the wrong work. I just chose the wrong context. Or frankly, better said, I grew out of that context. I outgrew that context is a better way to say it, because I don't want to blame my friends that are in corporate that are very happy. I think it was just a misalignment for me over the years. Okay. So number one, context is everything. Number two, what you're running away from will find you. I'll say that one again. What you're running away from will find you. So this is like a different version of like what you resist persists. But again, in the context of my world and my story, I was running away. I thought after burning out, right? Because I said I was like confused. I thought like I just chose the wrong career for myself, right? In hindsight, I know that everything was actually pretty good. If I look back, like I was excited to take every new job I took, like none of that was wrong. It just progressed, right? And then I outgrew it. But also because when 7 years ago, 2017, Laura Livingston said, I'm going to start a business from this space of having just recovered from this burnout, she thought she needed to go back, and she was right, but she thought she needed to go back to her first love, which is psychology. And so I actually, if you don't know, I started my business as a hypnotherapist first. I was a hypnotherapist for the first maybe 18 months. I would say I called myself and I was a hypnotherapist officially for about 18 months. Within the first few months, I was like, oh, I'm actually a coach too. Let me just own that, because I've been coaching people my whole life. And so I started calling myself a hypnotherapist and a coach in the first few months. Mostly served entrepreneurs because I was networking, right? So you can see how this is that was the gateway to get me into business coaching. It's very clear now in hindsight. But at the time, I needed to swing the pendulum completely the other way back to psychology, because I was so over business. Again, I was blaming the context burnt me out. And so I needed a completely different context. Yes, I needed to start my own business. But even more than that, I really, ironically, needed to stop talking about business, because I just wanted to get into working with people one-on-one from a human behavior perspective. And so it's kind of funny, right? So my point is, what I was running away from was business. It found me because, I was an entrepreneur. I did not own that at all in the beginning. I was like, oh, I have a practice, right? I'm a hypnotherapist, I have a practice. It's good. I'm not really a business owner. Or in fact, I remember somebody told me when you started your business, and she put them in quotation marks. And that was one of the first moments where I was like, and she just meant it because I kept calling myself a hypnotherapist. And I have several clients who are therapists, and they will also say no, we have to also see ourselves as business owners. You all know this. And so all that is to say, my point with the what you're running away from will find you was, in my case, I was trying to avoid business, and I think it was still I needed to pendulum swing over to hypnotherapy and psychology in order to go, woo, that was too far. I actually miss business. I actually want to talk to these people about the businesses they're running, not about their arguments with their husbands, right? That is where I actually want to play. But I had to kind of get into all the places to find my spot, or my next spot, I should say. Yeah. So for me, what I was running away from business over to psychology, business and mindset, right? The ultimate answer was bring them together. I was also running away when I started my business the first 2 years. I was mostly doing networking for my marketing and sales activities. And in so many ways that was right, and I don't want to judge myself for that, and I am still using networking as one of my primary strategies. And the mindset component of that, the way that I went a little so far into that direction, or the way that I was operating in a slightly less healthy way than I would have loved myself to do, is that I was trying to avoid marketing and sales, right? Again, because I wanted to get away from the traditional ways of running businesses. And so I was like, well, it's fine. If I just go like have a great network, I don't have to do marketing and sales, and I can avoid that. The irony is not lost on me, right? And I think getting into, that was my gateway drug that got me into entrepreneurship, me telling myself that lie that like if I could do this over here, then I wouldn't have to do sales and marketing. That at least got me going. And then when I was ready to deal with the fact that I really did have to do sales and marketing, I was kind of ready for that. And it helped that I moved to this island 5 years ago, which was, like after year 2, where there was no networking. This was before 2020, so there was no real virtual networking. Like I had to dive into social media, but I was willing and ready to do that at that point in time. So I was running away from business to mindset. I was running away from marketing and sales. Again, it's not lost on me, the irony. It makes me laugh a little bit. And then I was running away from burnout. I was so scared of burnout. To this day, it's still my number one fear related to my work, is burning out. And I can smell that shit from a mile away for myself and for my clients. And I have to know that about myself so that I can give appropriate guidance and advice to my clients, right? Because I have a lot of clients that are more type A than I am. And so they need to be held back, but they don't need to be held back as much as like my little burnout fear wants to hold them back, right? And so my job is to stay clear when I'm doing that. But it's also why I have my own coach. It's also why I coach myself. It's also why I have certain ways that I make business decisions. Because on the one hand, I can swing the pendulum as far as I want and be like, yee, more new clients, let's go. And I also know that feeling, like I can just even feel it like one day of too much. And I've had to normalize, like one day of too much is actually just fine. That's just a busy day. That does not a burnout make. And I've done a couple of think differentlys on this topic, so I'm going to stay away from that now because I want to get to all my 7. But I don't want to say I've burnt out, but a few years ago, I got so meh with the business itself, not the work, but the business. And the lesson that I learned from that was, again, what you're running away from will find you, right? What you resist persists. I don't want to tell a story that I made that happen for myself either. But I do think like the lesson underneath that, or the subsection lesson of this one, is you can even burn out if you love your work. Like it's not enough to love your work. And that was when I doubled down, not only for myself, but for my clients. I've always done this, but I really doubled down on looking at the sustainability of the business and looking at, oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. Looking at the business and the strategy aspects, both external and internal, in terms of how the business is being run. Because I guess when I started my business, I wanted to believe that my love for this craft, my love for coaching, my love for working one-on-one with people would just carry me. And the business would take care of itself. And in some ways that's true, kind of. But you have to have solid strategy, and you have to have a solid plan, and you have to have the business, the practical business elements, the foundations of business. If you want to keep going long-term, sustainably, profitably, in a way that's actually enjoyable for you, so that when you do, you're inevitably going to have days and weeks and months where you're not loving it as much. The love of the craft is not enough, right? Just finding a great person that you fall in love with is not enough. There has to be compatibility in the way that you want to live your lives if you want to live together in a longer term relationship, right? And same with business. Okay, so number 1, context is everything. Number 2, what you're running away from will find you. Number 3, you guys, I actually like to work. I thought I was a person that did not like to work. I just did. I thought I was just one of those people. I did not understand people that liked their work. And I used to think that that was because I hadn't found my thing. But then even when I found my thing, I still only wanted to work so much. And like, I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying, how do I want to say this? I've worked an appropriate amount of hours for the vast majority of the last 7 years. Like, I'm very comfortable with the numbers of hours that I've put in. But my mindset around that is always a little bit off because I was just so scared of burning out, right? Because this is not just corporate's fault. This is like my whole lifetime of the way that I used to approach work. And so my like biggest lesson in this is, again, back to context is everything. Like, it wasn't that I am a person who doesn't like to work. It's that I just need things to be set up to make sense for me. Right? And I didn't know what that felt like. So until I knew what that felt like, I blamed all kinds of other reasons for why I wasn't enjoying the work. But it turns out I'm actually quite motivated, quite disciplined, pretty good at getting shit done. I can procrastinate like the best of them, but like I just actually like to work. And that's something that I think I didn't even realize until maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes about this. So one quick funny to that point, I had a session with my coach yesterday. And as I said, I'm like almost booked out for the rest of the year. And I'm so happy and excited about these people that I'm working with, these people that I'm going to be working with, and these people that are potentially I'm going to be working with. And to the point where I was like, oh, I'll just open up one more spot. Just one more spot. I'm just going to open up one more spot. And she's like, okay, where's that going to go? How's that going to, like, where in the calendar and the way that you've structured, like, okay, but where? And I was like, shit, right? Because again, I do like to work, and I also know how I work best. And it's about holding my boundaries around the time, which means that even when I have an awesome, amazing client, they might have to wait a month before we can get started, and that's okay. Like, this is not a problem, right? And she even joked with me, like, who are you that you're like, oh, it's okay, I'll just do more work, right? Because I just like to work. I just like to do this. Okay, number 4, your potential is limitless. Your potential is limitless. And I think, like, I see that. That's just sort of how I see us as humans. I think most of us limit ourselves in many ways. I think society likes to limit us in terms of, like, what we think is possible. But specifically, entrepreneurship was on my mind for many years before I started my business. But I was scared because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I didn't believe until later that I could actually, like, be successful and make money doing it, enough money doing it. And I am 48 years old. I have always been single. I have never had 2 incomes, right? Even with all my long-term relationships. Like, so the need to support myself is both because I'm super independent and I'm just going to be that way anyway. But it's also been in the past and now, even in a long-term relationship, like, it's still out of necessity. I'm still the one responsible for myself. And so all that is to say, entrepreneurship is limitless in terms of the amount of money that you can make. But I was so scared of thinking that I didn't have the potential that I held back a few years before I started this business because I didn't know that I could do that. Does that make sense? So I see entrepreneurship as limitless in terms of money you can make, the fulfillment you can generate for yourself, the creativity that you can, right? Like the fact that like I can just be like, hey, I feel like I'm going to do this new creative thing and I don't have to get anybody's permission. I'm the only one who has to say yes, is freaking freeing to me. And so from a practical perspective, I've learned that over and over and over again, like the potential for what I can do with this business and just as a person is limitless. I keep learning and relearning that. And if I go back to me a couple of 2 or 3 years ago where everything felt very meh, in hindsight, I can now tell you that the reason I was suffering, in quotation marks, is because I wasn't operating at my potential. And I think once you do something that fulfills you, when that changes, and it does, and it will, and that's normal, right? Just like when you finally fall on, I keep going back to the dating references, but like when you fall in love with, the right type of person for you or the right person for you, you start to realize like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like, right? And anything less just will not do, right? Because you've raised your standards. You raised your standards for yourself, all the things. And so as I was pivoting a few years ago, in hindsight, I just needed to take my stuff to the next level, to just overgeneralize it, which meant that until I did, and until I figured out what I needed to do specifically to get there, and what that even looked like, because I didn't know what was wrong, it felt so crappy because I was operating under my potential. And I don't mean potential for like, practical things you can accomplish. That, of course, is true. But I mean like that feeling like you're just misaligned or not. And it's not even misalignment, right? It's like less than perfectly aligned. It felt terrible because it felt so good when everything felt aligned. That like a 1% change down, which was still like so much better than my previous career. But because it was from like amazing to like slightly less than amazing, I like kind of lost my shit. Because it doesn't feel good to operate at less than your potential. It actually feels really good. I'm like so grateful to Adam Grant for coming out with his Hidden Potential book, because that was when I could finally go, oh, that's the word I've been looking for to describe this for myself, is I just wasn't reaching my potential as a person in my work. And I could go on, but I just want to say like that hurts. That sucks. It kind of starts to feel like burnout. And in hindsight, I think that misalignment, right? The context is everything. The misalignment in my previous career got me so confused that I thought it was the work itself too, right? It was just the context. But all that is to say, and this isn't to say you need to be you're never going to always be perfectly aligned either. Like we're not going to shoot for perfection either, but it does feel, you will feel it when something feels misaligned. Okay. I've got enough time for my last few. Okay. Number 5, as a creative person in a type A environment in my corporate career, which is why I thought I didn't like to work, I also think, I know, that at least for the first 3 years or more, I was at varying levels, very hesitant to put too much structure into the way that I got work done. And I'm going to skip all the details here because this could be like a whole topic by itself. So I'll just say I was afraid of too much structure, right? And that could be as simple as like, oh God, I have 3 clients today. I sort of just wish I only had 2 client calls today because I'm a little scared that might feel like too much, right? Again, back to that burnout fear. So it could have been something as simple as that, right? Like, oh no, I have too many amazing creatures on my calendar today. Or it could be as simple as I don't want to put more of a marketing, I don't want to like put too much structure on my marketing plan because what if I want to change it? That feels like rigid and I need to be creative, right? And like the old me needed creative to look like I get to decide at any moment what I want to do. And what I've learned over the years, in part thanks to coaching, in part thanks to team members who have come on and helped me create standard operating procedures and put shit in writing and put templates together where I can just grab stuff and copy paste. Like, that stuff feels so good, right? And in part due to my mindset and my own like just realization that like the only way I was going to be able to serve the clients that I wanted to serve was if I had my back end operations operating with a little bit of structure. But that structure that I've created for myself, and now I am like a little bit laughing at how much structure is going on behind the scenes in my business. Like the old me is like, really, lady? Like, really? But that the surprise for me is that feels so freeing. Because even though I might have a full looking day on my calendar, I've already made all the decisions. I already know what gets done today and what gets done another day. I can just sit down and do my work, and I can just sit down and serve the person in front of me. And I just don't need to worry about all the hanging little things. There's 40 million things on my to-do list. There always will be. That's never going to be, a change. This is a job. But because I made that decision already, I don't have to spend every single day replanning it. And that's what my need for freedom, need for flexibility, need for creativity, need for no structure wanted. But in actuality, that structure has given me the freedom. And so I don't know if I even said number 5. The title of this one is Boring is the New Freedom. When my shit is boring behind the scenes, I am a better coach. I am a happier person. I'm able to serve more people, which means I make more money. I don't necessarily feel like I'm expending any more energy. And because I'm a creative person, those little tiny details actually spin me out more than like a really big problem. Like if I have to have a difficult conversation with a client, I could do that 8 times a day over like having to deal with some tech issue. It's just that's the stuff that spins me out, that drains my energy. And so because I have some of those things set up for me in a repeatable fashion, shall we say, it just frees me up. Yeah, and then I even wrote like underneath this, like, dare I say, boring is the new freedom, dare I say, it's more exciting. Because I just actually have space to do the stuff that I want to do. Okay, let's see, do I have time? Yes. Number 6, small changes feel better 9 times out of 10 than big changes. Small changes feel better than big changes. And remember when I said, like, I'm getting ahead of myself? What I have learned, I learned this in my academic training, and I knew it, and technically I applied this when I was consulting to big companies, but big companies, relatively speaking, change so slowly, right? Like they are moving slowly. I would be brought in to do like change projects that would last like anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Whereas like 2 months with a one-on-one client, we can really move things. That's because I'm sitting directly with the business owner, right? But small businesses are a lot fewer people to move, even if you have a team. Some of my clients have, team members, 10, 15, 20 team members. It's still so much, to me, it's still so much faster and so much more rewarding and enjoyable, the momentum. And I am able to see so much more of this small changes are bigger than big changes in practice because of all of the things that I've already said. Context matters, right? When you change one thing, right? I'm very big into experimentation, but like scientific method, scientific experimentation with my clients in terms of, if this doesn't feel right, let's try this one thing over here and see what happens, right? Because again, just one little change can be the difference between how you feel about it. And it's like if you're changing the actual root cause of the problem, then you can sort of look around and go, okay, well, now how does everything else feel? Versus trying to solve your meh with like 8 different actions, and then you don't know which one solved it. You don't know which one was the cause, and therefore you don't know which one to sustain, so now you have to keep 8 actions going. Not sustainable. And I am a person who really, in my personal life, I live on an island. I moved to Honduras 5 years ago with 6 months notice. Like, I love big change. I'm really good at that. I just like that. But what I've learned also as I've gone through this in the last 7 years is I've changed a lot less in my personal life because it's very nervous system regulating. And I don't need so much of the big change as much as I'm so here for it and I'll probably move again. But what feels really good, I can get so much satisfaction as a change lover, and not everybody loves change. A lot of people are on the other end of that spectrum. But as a change lover, I can get so much satisfaction from a small change because I can just watch its ripple effect. And then I can go, okay, now how does that feel? Now what do I want to change next? From a more informed place. Okay, my final piece, and I think this was also a piece that was happening 2 or 3 years ago when I was feeling kind of meh about my work. I think my biggest lesson in this, and one of the reasons I was hesitant to go into entrepreneurship, is I thought it would be lonely. And I will be completely honest with you, it really can be. I am surprised at the moments that I think only in the last couple of years would I have labeled it lonely. And maybe that's not the right label for you, but all that is to say, what is the heavy lies the crown, right? Like, it doesn't really matter unless you're a co-founder. The buck stops with you. Everybody in your business, clients, customers, audience, team members, everybody, you're the hub. And it can be hard and heavy and lonely, if that's the right word for you, to be the only one in your position. And I think that is happening a lot with people in the last few years, even more since 2020, because I think like post-pandemic small businesses, especially small online businesses, have really changed. I mean, of course we changed in the pandemic, but I think we changed again in the last couple of years. And that's a conversation for another day. But I think the loneliness piece has just gotten greater just from the conversations that I'm having with people. So what to do about that one? I have 3 suggestions, and these are 3 suggestions that I have given myself since the beginning, because I was afraid it was going to be lonely, and it was. I don't want to say it was. It's not, and I have had moments, right, of that, like, it's still only just me over here. For me, 3 things that I've been doing for 7 years, and 3 things that I will do for the next 7. And 3 things that I recommend that you take and run with. Number 1, get yourself some peers, collaborators, colleagues, a community of sorts. Sometimes group programs are great for that. Peers, people who get it. That's partly why I created Real Connections, because I wanted us to have a place where we could speak as peers to one another. That's like the water cooler conversation, right? That we don't get as small business owners unless you have a brick and mortar. So go, if you need some buddies, go get some buddies. Biz besties, right? Like, that's a term I never heard before I started this business. Get some peers and get some regularity with connecting with your peers. It will be so effing validating. And I think that that's the only reason I made it through my first 2 years in business, because I had no earthly idea what I was doing. No earthly idea what I was doing. I really did not. But I was just so willing to try, and I poured my heart and soul into networking, in-person networking in my city back in San Francisco, where that meant then I was also creating friendships, right? And I was physically out in the world with peers and colleagues. And that, I just feel like that set me up with a foundation. From a marketing perspective, I'm still getting referrals from those relationships, frankly, from a marketing perspective, but also I'm speaking mostly from like the mindset and the sanity perspective. So get some peers, come to Real Connections if you haven't joined us, ask for help and get support, and hire people sooner rather than later. Whether that's a VA, a coach, an accountant. Everybody's business hires are going to be different at different phases, and I'm not going to sort of try to prescribe that now. But every single time I've hired someone, whether it was a coach or a team member, it has helped me fast track to the next level, and it has brought on so much stress relief. So much stress relief, to the point where I now have a little reminder in my calendar when I hire someone new to look back 90 days later and see how I feel. Because guaranteed, what I suspected, like usually you hire someone or even a coach to be like, I can't hold this anymore, right? Like, please help me with this, right? You know what you want help with first. You know your biggest challenge. And my service provider is like, please hear this and listen to this and take that and throw it into your marketing. But like, you usually know the biggest problem you want solved, right? Like you usually know that, your biggest pain point. But 90 days later, you might see the unintended beautiful consequence of that, of like, oh, I didn't even realize this person does this too now. Oh my God. Or like, they're so good at this and I didn't even know I needed this, but I'm so relieved that I don't have to do it anymore, right? Yeah. And ask for help. The third piece with that is asking for help from a beginner's mind, which is, I think once we've been in business a couple years, we sort of have this weird thing that happens where we like think we're supposed to know everything, and we're not. We're just supposed to know everything, and we're not supposed to be still learning. And I'm 7 years in, and I think that's one of my sort of sub lessons under this one. It's like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to keep learning. I wanted to always have to learn, right? I'm never going to be done learning, and that's kind of the point for me. That's what I like about it. But then sometimes we have to remember we're a beginner at something, or sometimes we have to remember that like we're picking something to dive into to be better at, or to get deeper in, or to master. And if you don't take a beginner's mindset, or even like okay, I'm advanced and I want to advance past whatever advanced is, like if you don't acknowledge yourself at whatever level you're at, not to diminish yourself, but just to give yourself the space to learn, like you won't learn, because you're going to be like, I have to figure this out myself, right? Which then perpetuates the not asking for help, which then means you don't keep learning and growing. And I think that can create stagnation too, when we don't allow ourselves the like humility, but also the grace and the permission to just take a beginner's mindset with something. Which then means it's easier to ask for help, right? It's almost like if I can just remember that, right? I feel like my most recent 2 new clients came in with, this is where I am. I've got this piece. This is where I want to go. And I think this is where I need to learn more, right? That is empowering. That means they know who to hire. It also just means they're giving themselves space to go, I've done these things and I'm so proud of that. And now I want this. And now I'm willing to learn this to get there. And now I'm looking at my next level, and I'm just going to ask for support and help to get there. Like that is actually really, I find, very empowering. Instead of, I'm terrible at this, I need help, which like not to judge, like there's always moments of that too for coaches and service providers and team members and hiring an expert in something that you're not good at because you don't need to be good at. But that beginner's mindset piece, I think, is also what can then make us feel even lonelier, you know, or contribute to the meh. And for me, that's what makes this long term. Again, I'll just leave you with this. I am in this for the long game, and my suspicion is that you are too. And it's so easy, I think, sometimes to just want a quick cash injection or to just want something new that we're trying to just hurry up and work so we can get the satisfaction on the other end. But I also think that most of us actually really like the process if we just hold ourselves off and like let ourselves find a way to like the process. And I think that is, my hope is that these 7 things, I think so much for me, these 7 things are things that keep things sustainable for me. And I'm hoping that what you can pull from this will help you to keep things sustainable, meaning that you're in it for the long game, not the like, you know, the quick 100K month that then you're going to have to deliver on really, really a lot and wear yourself out, and then you're going to buy yourself 6 months on the beach. Like some people like that sort of pathway, and that's fine. But something I've realized recently is like I get vacations. I don't need vacations anymore because I've just found a way to work in a way that feels good to me. And so, yeah, of course, I want to take vacations, and I take big vacations. I took a month off last summer, and I'm taking a month off next year. But not because I'm needing a like detox break, burnt out, right? It's just because that's how I want to spend my free time. And I think that the sustainability, the continuity of running a business is a long game. And when we play the long game, it feels better over time. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly recap these, and then I'm going to quickly look at yours, and then we're going to go. Context is everything. What you're running away from will find you. This one's very me. I actually like to work. Your potential is limitless. Boring is the new freedom. Small changes are bigger than bigger ones. Small changes are better than big ones. And it can get lonely, so go find people. Okay, let's quickly look at these. Let's see. Hire a coach, 100%, 100%. I wish I had done that sooner. Always be marketing and work with Laura. Thank you. Talk about what you do naturally in real life. Yes, and you never know who needs what you offer. 100%. 100%. I love that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Co-sign all of these. Okay. If you would like to save the chat, I'm reminding myself to save the chat. So please save the chat. I hope this was helpful. Next week, I'm talking about being a high achiever and what nobody told me about that. And then I am picking October topics. So if you have a suggestion, I'm always open to your opinions, questions. Even if you have a question or like an insight today, that might help me pick a question. So like you don't have to make a formal request of a question of a topic. And you're welcome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to stop recording, but I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And thank you for celebrating my 7 years with me. And I hope you're part of the next 7. Thanks so much.
Recording